It's a full circle moment for us as a family. We've survived a lot of trauma.
Tonight, human trafficking and sexual exploitation is the focus of the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls.
You know, there's not a lot that I can do as an individual physically, but if I can be here in a spiritual sense and offering this to the people here.
It started small, but this year more join the call to cleanse the streets of Edmonton.
I hope that it isn't because it's a First Nations community that it's being neglected.
And calls to reduce the speed limit at Kingsclear First Nation, where a mother's life was lost. Good evening. Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Melissa Ridgen. Sexual exploitation is the issue at hand at the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls. It's held this week in St. John's, Newfoundland. These are the last public hearings the inquiry will hold before commissioners wind down to write their final report. But before that happens, commissioners will hear about sexual exploitation and how it relates to missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. As Tom Fenario reports, witnesses struggled to get their story out.
This week is going to be hard for all of us. The subject matter is sensitive, it's disturbing.
Barbara Manitowabi knows this better than most. Her daughter, Shayla, is a survivor of human trafficking.
It's a full circle moment for us as a family. We've survived a lot of trauma, but we got Shay back. And she's safe.
Yes, I did.
But as the National MMIWG Inquiry will hear this week, not all cases end well.
It's a huge tragedy. It seemed that we don't talk enough about this. It seemed like people don't know enough, but it's happening here in our communities. It's happening here in Canada.
RCMP Assistant Commissioner Joanne Crampton agrees. She defines human trafficking as the transporting of a person to another region for forced labor. She says in Canada, the vast majority of human trafficking cases involve moving women between provinces for sexual exploitation. She also says that human trafficking is underreported and that Indigenous women are overrepresented among its victims.
And for people to understand what human trafficking really is, a lot of women who are in an exploitive situation do not recognize that they're in an exploitive situation. So that's where the education needs to take place.
But that's not the only education that needs to happen. Crampton and Ontario Provincial Police Inspector Tina Chalk both spoke about improving gaps in policing. Among the things the OPP and the RCMP are working towards improving are better interagency sharing of information, more education for officers and the general public regarding how human trafficking occurs, and the training of officers to identify the more obscure signs of sexual exploitation while investigating other crimes. Chalk used herself as an example from her time spent investigating sexual assaults.
I'm sure, likely at some point, I probably missed human trafficking. Because I didn't have that awareness, I very likely charged someone with sexual assault type offenses, but didn't realize that human trafficking was there, probably because I didn't ask the victim and they didn't tell me. And that's not their responsibility to do that. That's the police to understand that and ask the right questions.
24-year-old Shayla Manitowabi Cook says she likes what she heard today from the police. Because her case is still under investigation, she can't go into too much public detail about her experiences. But in order for things to improve, the Ojibwe woman says more victims need to come out from the shadows.
You're not alone, basically, is what I like to say, and just come out to look up support groups, go to the police. There's you might not want to testify right away, but you know what, there are groups that are there that can help you, come to terms with what is happening to you.
Tom Fenario, APTN National News, St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador.
The Kingsclear First Nation in New Brunswick is divided, not about politics or any particular issue, but literally by a highway. For years, cars have been speeding through the community, and the route has now turned deadly. A 27-year-old mother was killed trying to get across. Angel Moore explains what the community is doing now.
This highway cuts through the Kingsclear First Nation in New Brunswick. Cars travel in excess of 100 kilometers an hour. And getting from one side to the other can be deadly. At the beginning of September, Alicia Paul was killed, leaving behind 3 young children.
She was my daughter. She was a mother. She was so much. Like, our family it's just devastating, like, to lose her, you know. This was her and Tayden back in 2010.
According to her mother, Paul had hoped to go back to school to study early childhood education. Friend Sandra Atwin says she was devoted to her children.
And I saw her walking by one day with her children, and they were all eating out of a bag of chips, and they all had a soda, and they all looked very, very happy. And I said, I want you to know that's the memory I have of Alicia.
Paul's mom wants people to see past the recent media coverage.
I think we all have challenges in life. I don't think that Native women are any different than any other women, and I don't know why they're portrayed that way in the media.
Atwin says the community is close and looks out for each other.
But yeah, portraying someone in the news in a different light, I just don't, I want to know if they know how hurtful that is for a family to see that and read that in the news.
The community is demanding that the province steps in and makes a safe crossing at the site. Vigils are being held every Friday night until something is done.
I would like to see the speed limit lowered, a safe passage for us to cross. Anything else that they can do that's going to keep people alive, like for safety, you know.
Chief Gabriel Atwin has been asking for a safe crossing.
But, you know, really, I believe in every other province, just about through Canada, that if you drive through a community or a First Nation, it's reduced.
Atwin wants the speed immediately reduced until a solution is found.
We have to talk about the speed. It's paramount. It's dangerous. I mean, just take a look, you know, and everybody knows it.
The Department of Transportation and Infrastructure did not respond to an interview request, but in an email statement to APTN News, say the province is working with the community to explore a variety of options.
Do you care about this?
Yeah.
A local MLA was asked some hard questions at the vigil. Conservative Dominic Hardy says there is no excuse not to reduce the speed.
They've made accommodations for communities, and there's no reasons we shouldn't do that here. And I hope that it isn't because it's a First Nations community that it's being neglected.
Atwin says the community is growing and they need a solution now.
We've always been here. We've always crossed that highway to hunt, to go up, hunt, trap, practice ceremony.
Paul's mom is glad people are finally listening.
And it makes me very happy to hear. It makes me sad at the same time, because I wish it would have been done sooner.
Atwin is waiting to meet with the province. Until then, people still have to cross the stretch of highway at their own risk. Angel Moore, APTN National News, Kings Clear.
A man from a northern Manitoba First Nation has died on a Greyhound bus, and his family is in mourning over a situation they feel could have been prevented. Abraham Donkey was on his way to Winnipeg for a medical appointment for his heart condition, but he didn't make it. He boarded a medical service vehicle at a nursing station in Nisichawayasik Cree Nation to transport him to Thompson. Family members claim he asked someone at the nursing station for an escort but was denied. From Thompson, Donkey got on a Greyhound bus over 750 kilometers north of Winnipeg. A few hours outside the city, passengers noticed his failing health. An ambulance was called and rushed him to a nearby hospital where he was pronounced dead.
We need to certainly look at the transportation protocols for patients, you know, coming out from northern Manitoba. But I think this whole issue of transportation speaks for the greater need of better medical healthcare facilities in northern Manitoba. Maybe they need facilities in Thompson to deal with northern people.
We'll bring you more on this story in the coming days. Well, it's time for us to take a short break, but when we come back, some tough talk from Alberta's NDP Premier, who wants the Trans Mountain Pipeline project to move ahead. But first, here's some of tomorrow's weather forecast for you. Starting on the east coast, we've got 10 in Charlottetown and rain, 13 and rain in Halifax. Inukjuak is 0 and snow. Kuujjuaq is -2 with some sunshine. Nain is +2 and some sunshine. Chibougamau is snowy and 2. Montreal, sunshine and 9. 11 in Toronto. Sault Ste. Marie is 8 with some rain. North Bay 6 with some rain. Big Trout Lake, sunny and 4. Kapuskasing, cloudy and 4. Churchill -4 and rain. Pucktawagan -4 and rain as well. 3 and some rain in Winnipeg, but sunny in Gimli and 3. 10 in sunshine in Saskatoon, 9 in Regina and Estevan. Uranium City's -1 and sunny, and Stony Rapids -4 with some sunshine, +4 for Buffalo Narrows. Welcome back. It's Election Day in Yellowknife, the capital of the Northwest Territories. Our reporter Charlotte Moret-Jacobs caught up with one candidate looking for a seat at the City Council table.
In a place where 33% of the population is Indigenous, one would think there would be some representation for city councillors. But there isn't, and there hasn't been in a long time. Until Stacey Smith.
We haven't really had any Indigenous candidates for quite some time. I think the last one that was on council was Gail Sear back in the 90s. So it's been a while for us to have any Indigenous representation, and that was one of my key pushes.
Smith is Clicho Dene, born and raised in Yellowknife. Amongst the usual contenders running, there's the shared promise of creating affordable housing, better education, and addressing homelessness. Smith shared these values at the last candidates forum.
I think, though, some of the things that we can do is definitely public transit. We can definitely beef that up. Access to transit is also very, very important.
She is also the owner of Flowers North. With that background, Smith's platform focuses on revitalizing downtown.
Because we have such a high influx of people that come in for jobs, they don't kind of understand life in the north. And so when they see the homeless population, it's more of a burden, and I don't want to come downtown. And I want people to want to be downtown.
And it stated that the City of Yellowknife put more resources towards the implementation of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada's calls to action.
At the last forum, candidates debated resolutions around reconciliation, something Smith spoke passionately about.
Some of them are Native women, some of them are the healing drum, ensuring that there's education out there for our residents in terms of missing and Indigenous women and children.
There are 16 councillors vying for 8 seats on council. Only 3 of those are women. While Smith says she hopes the city is ready for more diversity on council, she was nervous at the forum.
Because they were asking such hard-hitting questions, of course my little heart was pitter-patting because I was like, okay, I hope I don't sound too plain English in comparison to some of the other candidates that have a little bit more experience.
For Smith, she says she will go about her day as any other, and after work she'll offer rides to anyone who needs to get out and vote. The polls will remain open until 8 p.m. tonight. Charlotte Moret-Jacobs, APTN National News, Yellowknife.
5 years ago, a handful of people gathered in Edmonton in hopes of reducing violent crime by smudging the streets. Since then, Healing the Streets has become an annual event, and as APTN's Chris Stewart reports, this year, the smudging ceremony is bigger than ever.
5 years ago, Damien Abrahams decided his neighborhood was too violent, too much crime, too much violence against women. He decided to start a walk to smudge 118th Avenue to help remove the bad energy. It started with just 4 people.
The intention is to kind of clear the energy that contributes to the trauma and the violence and the sexual exploitation that happens here.
5 years later, more than 10 times that number are here. Mostly local residents who want to see violence here stopped.
I live in this area, I see it a lot, and there's not a lot that I can do as an individual physically, but if I can be here in a spiritual sense and offering this to the people here, that's when I decided that this is what I wanted to do.
A lot of us grew up around this area, and for us to come back today and have a day where we're trying to bring positive energy and to show the community that, you know, we're here, we care, and we want to help.
The group breaks up into 3, each group going to a different route and more streets. The Crazy Indian Brotherhood joined the smudging. They are a First Nation group whose goal is to improve communities.
We're just here to help out, support the community. You know, we want to see things looking up in Edmonton, things looking better, you know, like we don't want nothing bad to happen to anybody.
I think at the end of the day, we're all just one big family, and we have to continue to support each other and, you know, just always give back.
Chris Stewart, APTN National News, Edmonton.
A recent United Nations report on climate change has made a frightening prediction. It will be irreversible unless carbon dioxide emissions are reduced by 45% in 12 years. Today, NDP leader Jagmeet Singh asked for an emergency debate on this issue in the House of Commons.
Since that report was released.
3 MPs, Liberal Nathaniel Erskine-Smith, Green Party leader Elizabeth May, and NDP Parliamentary leader Guy Caron argued for the emergency debate.
The changes that we're seeing are irreversible. Time is not on our side. A 10-year window to go to 45% below 2010 levels of greenhouse gases will require heroic, massive global effort.
Climate change, or catastrophic climate change, is the single most serious threat facing the world. And Canada is failing to do its part. We have the Liberals that are focused on attacking the Conservatives for not having a plan. Now, while that's true, the Liberals' targets for climate change are the exact same targets as the Harper Conservatives.
Speaker of the House Jeff Reagan granted the emergency debate, which is ongoing right now. Well, differences of opinion over the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion and tar sands flared up over the weekend when a former advisor of the Alberta government criticized the expansion. Premier Rachel Notley could not sit still. Our friends at CTV bring us this story.
Speaking to a group of Alberta teachers, Rachel Notley was the one looking to give a lesson, one aimed at those fighting the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion.
Maybe on Salt Spring Island you can build an economy on condos and coffee shops, but not in Edmonton and not anywhere in Alberta.
Alberta's Premier defiant, saying those in opposition are foolish.
Here in Alberta, we ride horses, not unicorns, and I invite pipeline opponents to saddle up on something that is real.
The criticism was her response to keynote speaker Zipporah Berman, an environmentalist and former policy advisor to the Alberta government.
This was a bad project that had a bad process. It's being sold as the holy grail to our future prosperity. It's simply not true.
Berman argued the oil sands are large enough, saying the province doesn't need the project, which would increase oil flow from Alberta to BC.
The idea that pipelines are answers to climate change is absurd. You don't buy more cigarettes to quit smoking.
Across from the Kinder Morgan facility here in Burnaby, Camp Cloud has been dismantled for more than a month now. The protesters' tents taken down, but just down the way at the Watch House, opposition is still strong.
Just because people aren't visibly there, we're all thinking about it daily.
As they work on a totem pole to commemorate the effects of climate change, these activists say Rachel Notley's comments are not welcome here.
I think she's all about the money, and I understand that people, are, have to survive, but, so does the environment.
In Edmonton, it's clear the speech garnered some support from teachers. What Notley really needs, though, is support from Indigenous leaders, after the Federal Court of Appeal put the project on hold until more consultation is done. Brianna Karsten-Smith, CTV News, Vancouver.
To Chile now, where clashes are erupting in protest of Columbus Day celebrations. It's part of the Mapuche resistance, which demands that Indigenous lands be returned to its people. In past riots, this radical faction has been accused of burning churches and lumber trucks. The Mapuche are Chile's largest indigenous group and traditionally live in peace, but Chilean police have been accused of brutal abuses against them. The Catholic Church has stripped 2 more Chilean bishops of their duties as priests amid claims they're linked to the sexual abuse of minors.
We have to remember the victims of abuse here. It's important for them to know that someone is no longer a priest, and it's important for them to know why he's no longer a priest, why he's been defrocked. This is even more essential in the case of a bishop.
The Vatican issued a statement on their defrocking and says the decision cannot be appealed. More than 100 Catholic clergy are being investigated in Chile over alleged sex crimes and attempts to cover them up. In May, 34 Chilean bishops offered their resignations to the Pope. He has so far accepted 7 of them. Advocates for abuse survivors have long complained about the Vatican's secrecy and lack of transparency in handling such cases. The face of mercury poisoning in Grassy Narrows, Ontario has died. I'll have the details after the break, but first, here's the rest of your weather. Up in northern Alberta, we've got 8 and rain in High Level, 2 and some rain in Fort Chip. Lots of sun down south, 15 in Edmonton, 17 for Red Deer, Calgary, and Lethbridge. 18 for Campbell River and Tofino. Bella Coola is 19. Quesnel 16. All sunshine down there. Sandspit is 15. Smithers is 13. 14 for Prince George. Dawson City is 8 and sunny. 1 up in Old Crow and lots of sunshine. To the Northwest Territories, we've got 11s for Trout Lake and Fort Liard. And Wrigley's cloudy and 5. Politics -7 and sunshine. Sax Harbor -13 but sunny. -13 in Cambridge Bay, -8 in Baker Lake and Whale Cove, sunshine there. Igloolik is -10, Cape Dorset -5, Iqaluit -6, and sunny in those communities. Welcome back. Steve Fobister of the Grassy Narrows First Nation in Ontario passed away last week in Kenora. He was the chief of Grassy Narrows for 5 terms and was once the Grand Chief of Treaty 3. Almost half a century ago, the people of Grassy Narrows were poisoned by mercury dumped into the English Wabigoon River system by a paper mill in nearby Dryden. Public outrage in the 1970s led to a compensation package for those who were poisoned from eating fish from the river. But not all people even qualified for the meager settlement, as little as $200 a month for many. In 2014, Steve Fobister staged a hunger strike at Queen's Park. It ended when an embarrassed Liberal government promised action. But little happened until this year when the newly elected Premier Doug Ford increased payouts and made them retroactive. Steve Fobister was 66. His funeral is in Grassy Narrows tomorrow. Well, that's all the time we have for tonight. You can always find more news on our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Melissa Ridgen, and I'll see you back here tomorrow. Have a great night.